My hands were trembling as I stared at my phone. Gerald, my lawyer, 3 missed calls from him. And then the message that froze my blood. Tom, call me immediately. Don't go to your daughter's house. I repeat, don't go. I was just about to put on my coat and leave. Lindsay had been insisting all week. Dad, you never come over anymore. The kids miss you. I made your favorite pot roast. Her voice still echoed in my ears. How could I refuse? But Gerald's message changed everything. I slowly sat back down on my leather couch, the same one Margaret and I had picked out 32 years ago, when we bought this house in Mount Royal. If she were alive, she'd know what to do. But it had been 4 years since she passed, and I'd been navigating this world alone ever since. With shaking hands, I dialed Gerald's number. Tom, he said, his tone as professional as always, but I could hear the tension beneath it. Where are you right now? Are you alone? He asked. Yes, I'm at home. What's going on, Gerald? You're scaring me, I said. Good. Stay there. Lock your doors. I'm coming over. There are some documents you need to see. This isn't a phone conversation. There was such gravity in his voice that my heartbeat quickened. About 20 minutes later, he sat across from me at the dining table, spreading out a stack of papers like evidence at a crime scene. And maybe they were exactly that. Tom, he began. 3 days ago, your daughter Lindsay and her husband Derek filed a petition with the Court of Queen's Bench. He paused, his serious lawyer's eyes fixed on mine. They're asking the court to declare you mentally incompetent. They want to become your legal guardians and gain control of all your assets. His words hit me like a physical blow. It felt as though someone had punched me straight in the gut. I felt dizzy. That's insane, I managed to say. I'm 67, not 97. I volunteer at the food bank. I manage my own investments. I renewed my driver's license just last month, without any issues. My voice rose. Panic was starting to turn into anger. Why would they do this? Gerald silently slid another document across the table toward me. Because of this, he said. Your house is now worth about $2.4 million. Your investment portfolio is valued at $1.8 million. With your pension and savings, your total estate comes to just over $5 million. I took a deep breath. I'd always known that Margaret and I were comfortable. We'd worked hard, saved carefully, invested wisely. I'd spent 35 years as a petroleum engineer. But hearing it laid out like that, so clinical, so cold, it felt like I was being listed as prey. Lindsay knows what the house is worth, I said quietly. We talked about the Calgary real estate market last Christmas. She joked that I was sitting on a gold mine. Gerald nodded. That wasn't a joke, Tom. He opened his laptop and turned the screen toward me. Look at this. Your daughter and Derek are in serious financial trouble. They bought that 5,000 square foot house in Springbank Hills, $650,000 mortgage. Then Derek convinced her to invest in his business partner's cryptocurrency venture. They lost $400,000. Your grandson Josh's private school costs $38,000 a year, and their property taxes alone are $22,000 annually. I stared at the screen, my mind numb. How do you know all this? I asked. Because, Gerald said. Their financial situation is part of their petition. They're claiming they need to protect your assets, because your mental state is declining and you might make irresponsible financial decisions. He paused for a moment, then added, and Tom, they've been planning this for at least 6 months. He leaned forward and opened another folder in front of me. Look at this, the evidence. Photos of you at Safeway, apparently looking confused in the cereal aisle. I looked down at the photographs Gerald had placed before me, blurry, grainy images of me standing in the Safeway cereal aisle, staring at the shelves. I was just trying to find the brand Margaret used to buy, I said quietly. My throat felt tight, the words heavy with disbelief. Gerald nodded grimly and flipped to another page. There's also a statement here from your family doctor, Dr. Patel, noting that you appeared disoriented during a checkup. I frowned, trying to recall. That day I had a bad cold, I said. I remember coughing the whole time. I just mixed up my medications for a moment. I forgot which antibiotic I'd already taken. Gerald exhaled, his tone measured but tense. They're using it as evidence of cognitive decline, Tom. It's part of the narrative they're building. He turned another page and my stomach dropped. And this, he said, is a transcript of a recorded conversation. They claim you couldn't remember your own phone number. I felt the blood rush to my face. I'd given them my old number, I said sharply. The one I used before I changed my provider. That's not confusion, that's habit. Gerald's eyes softened, but only for a second. I know, he said. But they're twisting every ordinary harmless thing, every moment of normal aging, into proof of incompetence. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of it all pressing down on me. This is fraud, I said finally, my voice hollow. This is elder abuse. Yes, Gerald said quietly. And unfortunately, Tom, it's becoming more and more common. Adult children targeting their parents' estates before they even pass away. The courts are seeing this more often than you'd believe. He closed his laptop with a soft click. The hearing is in 2 weeks. They've moved fast, probably hoping to catch you off guard. I rubbed my forehead. And if they win? I asked. Gerald's tone turned clinical again, almost cold. Then they become your legal guardians. They control your bank accounts, your investments, your house. They can sell your property, move you into assisted living, and make every medical decision for you. You'd lose all autonomy. I stared at him, the words echoing in my mind like a death sentence. Gerald leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. And Tom, based on their financial situation, I'd estimate they'd have your house on the market within 3 months. My chest tightened. The house. The one Margaret and I had built our lives in. The one where we'd raised Lindsay, celebrated birthdays and Christmas dinners, planted the garden together. The same house where Margaret had taken her last breath upstairs, her hand in mine. They can't do this, I whispered. Lindsay wouldn't. She's my daughter. Gerald's face was pained. I'm sorry, Tom, he said. But the evidence suggests otherwise. They've been planning this carefully. They waited until after your car accident last year, used that as leverage. They've been documenting every time you forgot a name, missed an appointment, hesitated in conversation. They've been building a story. The memory of that accident flashed before me, the red light, the teenager who'd slammed into my car. The police report had been clear. I wasn't at fault. But now it made sense. Lindsay's sudden insistence on attending my doctor's appointments, the way she'd started jotting things down on her phone while I spoke. She wasn't taking notes out of care, she was collecting ammunition. I looked up, my voice cracking slightly. What do I do, Gerald? For a moment, his expression softened, then shifted into something resolute, strategic. We fight back, he said firmly. And we fight smart. He leaned forward, eyes sharp now. But Tom, you need to be prepared for what this will mean. This isn't just a legal battle. This will tear your family apart. I thought of Lindsay as a little girl, how she'd curl up in my lap, begging me to read bedtime stories. How she'd clung to me at Margaret's funeral, sobbing into my shoulder. How just last week she'd said she loved me. And now this. The betrayal. The calculation. The willingness to strip away her own father's dignity, for money. I met Gerald's eyes. Tell me what we need to do. He smiled, not the smile of victory but the grim curve of a man preparing for war. First, he said, we're going to document everything. Starting now, you'll keep a detailed journal. What you do each day, who you speak with, every clear, coherent decision you make. I want timestamps, details, evidence that you're of sound mind. I nodded slowly, the weight of resolve settling in my chest. Okay. Gerald straightened his notes. Second. Gerald's pen tapped lightly against the table as he continued, his voice steady and deliberate. Second, he said, we're going to get you evaluated by an independent psychiatrist. Not your family doctor. They've likely already been influenced. I want a specialist in geriatric mental health, someone whose professional testimony will stand up in court. Someone who can state without any doubt that you're cognitively sound. I nodded, forcing my voice to remain even. Fine. He looked up at me then, his expression serious. Third, and this is crucial, Tom, you can't let them know that you know. You have to act completely normal. If they realize we're on to them, they'll either accelerate their plans or destroy the evidence. His words sank in slowly, heavy and terrifying. I stared down at the table, the truth twisting painfully in my gut. That dinner invitation, I said softly, it suddenly makes horrible sense now. Gerald's brow furrowed. What do you mean? They wanted me there tonight for a reason, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Didn't they? He leaned back, considering. I suspect they did, he admitted. They might have planned to have you sign something. Maybe a power of attorney slipped in with other routine-looking papers. Something like, just a bit of financial planning, Dad? I felt the blood drain from my face. He continued grimly, or they could have staged a situation, maybe recorded you acting confused or forgetful to use as more evidence. Happens, Tom. More often than you'd believe. The manipulation, the planning, it was breathtaking. My own daughter. My throat closed up as the words escaped me, broken and small. How could she do this to me? My voice cracked, and before I could stop myself, I realized tears were streaming down my face. 67 years old, and my own child had reduced me to this. Disbelief, humiliation, heartbreak. Gerald reached across the table and rested a steady hand on my shoulder. His tone softened, but the weight of experience lingered in his words. I've been practicing law for 30 years, Tom. I've seen this too many times. Money changes people. Or maybe, he added quietly, it just reveals who they really were all along. Over the next week, I did everything he told me to. Not a single instruction missed. I kept a detailed journal. Every crossword I completed, every person I spoke to, every shift I worked at the Calgary Food Bank. Every entry had timestamps, notes, precision. Evidence of a man who still had his mind, and his pride, intact. Then came the appointment with Dr. Sarah Chin, the geriatric psychiatrist Gerald had arranged. She was calm, methodical, professional, the kind of person whose gaze saw right through pretense. She ran me through an exhaustive set of cognitive tests. Memory recall, logic puzzles, verbal reasoning, problem solving. 3 sessions in total. At the end of the third, she looked at me with a gentle smile and said, Mr. Morrison, I can state with complete professional confidence that you show no signs of cognitive decline, dementia, or mental incompetence. Your memory is excellent, your reasoning is sharp, and your judgment is sound. In fact, she added with a faint smile, you're sharper than many people half your age. Her words should have brought relief, and they did for a moment, but the hardest part wasn't proving I was sane. It was pretending everything was normal with Lindsay. She called me that Wednesday evening, her tone light, almost cheerful. Dad, I'm so sorry about Sunday, she said. Derek's mother had a fall and we had to rush over. Can we reschedule for this weekend? Of course, sweetheart, I said, though the word felt bitter on my tongue. Is she all right? Oh, she's fine, Lindsay said with a small laugh. You know how dramatic she can be. That laugh, warm, familiar, the same laugh that used to echo through this house when she was a child. It hurt to hear it now. Actually, Dad, she went on, her tone turning casual, while I have you, Derek and I wanted to talk to you about setting up a trust, for estate planning. Just to make sure everything's organized in case. Well, we're not getting any younger. Even with the hearing approaching, even knowing I had legal counsel, she was still trying to manipulate me into giving her control. That sounds like a good idea, I said carefully. Let me think about it. She didn't skip a beat. Don't think too long, Dad, she said, a faint edge to her voice. These things are time sensitive. You never know what might happen. I froze. Was that a threat? I couldn't even tell anymore. That night, as the house sat silent around me, my phone rang again. This time it was Josh. Grandpa Tom, he said, his voice low and nervous, can I come over? I need to talk to you, alone. Of course, Josh. Is everything all right? He hesitated. I need to see you. Please. He arrived 20 minutes later on his bicycle, cheeks flushed, hair wind-blown, eyes wide with fear. He stood at the doorway clutching his phone. Grandpa, he said, his voice trembling, I need to show you something. But you have to promise not to tell Mom and Dad that I told you. My heart sank. Josh, what is it? He swallowed hard, pulling out his phone with shaking hands. I heard them talking last week. Mom and Dad. They didn't know I was home. He looked down, guilt flickering in his eyes. I recorded it. I know it's wrong, but after what I heard, I thought you should know. He tapped play. And then, in the stillness of my kitchen, I heard my daughter's voice fill the room, calm, composed, and terrifyingly cold. I'm telling you, Derek, the hearing is in 2 weeks. Josh's trembling hands gripped his phone as he pressed play. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat louder than the last. Lindsay's voice filled the kitchen, calm, confident, and utterly unfamiliar. Gerald Morrison might be his lawyer, but we have Dr. Patel's statement. We have the photos. We have everything documented. Then came Derek's voice, smooth and deliberate. What if your dad fights it? With what? We've been systematic. Every instance of forgetfulness, every missed appointment, every time he seemed confused. The judge will see a pattern of cognitive decline. And even if he tries to fight, it'll cost him hundreds of thousands in legal fees. By the time it's over, there won't be much estate left anyway. I stared at Josh, but he couldn't meet my eyes. My stomach twisted as Derek continued, his tone disturbingly casual. And if we win, when we win, the house goes on the market immediately. Even in this market, we should clear $1.8 million after the mortgage is paid off. That covers our crypto losses and gets us back to zero. Then we liquidate his investment portfolio, pay off our mortgage, and set up the trust for Josh's education. Then there was a pause, a silence that stretched until Lindsay spoke again. Her voice was colder than I had ever heard it in my life. There's a lovely assisted living facility in Airdrie. Much cheaper than Mount Royal. He'll be fine. He won't even know the difference soon enough. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Josh was crying now, silent, broken tears streaking down his cheeks. "Grandpa," he said, voice shaking, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. I love you. And they're talking about you like you're not even a person anymore." I felt something inside me crack. I reached for him, pulling him into my arms. He was shaking. My brave grandson, the child who had just betrayed his own parents to protect me. "You did the right thing, Josh," I said quietly, holding him close. "You did exactly the right thing." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes red. "Are they really going to take your house? The house where you and Grandma lived?" "Not if I can help it, buddy," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Not if I can help it." The moment Josh left, I called Gerald. He answered on the first ring. I told him what I'd just heard, my voice shaking as I described the recording. There was silence on the other end for a long moment, long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Finally, Gerald spoke. "Tom," he said slowly, "this changes everything. This is direct evidence of fraud and elder abuse. With this recording, we don't just defend against their petition, we go on the offense." "What do you mean?" I asked, my throat dry. "I mean," Gerald said firmly, "we're filing a counterclaim. Fraud. Attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable person. Conspiracy to commit theft. And Tom," his voice hardened, "we're going to make sure every judge in the Queen's Bench knows exactly what your daughter tried to do." The words sank deep, heavy but empowering. For the first time in weeks, I felt the faint pulse of resolve beneath the pain. The hearing came faster than I wanted it to. The courtroom felt cold despite the sunlight streaming through the high windows. I sat at the long wooden table, Josh beside me, his small hand gripping mine so tightly it almost hurt. Across the aisle sat Lindsay and Derek. Lindsay wouldn't meet my eyes. Her lawyer, slick hair, polished suit, rehearsed charm, looked as though he thrived on cases like this. Justice Maria Rodriguez presided, mid-50s, silver-gray hair, a gaze that could cut through steel. She looked like someone who'd seen every kind of deception and wasn't easily swayed. Lindsay's lawyer went first. His tone was smooth, measured, sympathetic. He presented the photos, Dr. Patel's notes, every so-called piece of evidence of my decline. He spoke as if telling a tragic story. "Your Honor, this is not a case of greed. Mr. Morrison is clearly in the early stages of cognitive decline. His daughter, Miss Morrison Fletcher, is simply trying to protect her father, to ensure his substantial estate is managed responsibly before he makes decisions that could jeopardize his own financial security." I could feel Josh's hand tighten around mine. Then it was Gerald's turn. He rose calmly, his expression unreadable. "Your Honor," he began, "I'd like to present Dr. Sarah Chen's psychiatric evaluation, completed just last week. Dr. Chen found no evidence whatsoever of cognitive decline. In fact, Mr. Morrison tested above average for his age group in all areas of mental competence." He handed the report to the clerk, and Justice Rodriguez read it carefully, her expression unchanging. "I'd also like to present evidence," Gerald continued, "that Miss Morrison Fletcher and her husband have been systematically documenting normal aging behaviors and presenting them as evidence of incompetence." He went through each point methodically. The confusion at Safeway, Mr. Morrison was looking for a specific brand of cereal. The disorientation at Dr. Patel's office. He had influenza and a fever of 101. The forgotten phone number. He had recently changed providers and was still adjusting to the new number. Gerald paused, then looked directly at the judge. He spoke clearly, every word deliberate. "But, Your Honor," he said, "most importantly, I have evidence of the true motive behind this petition." He pressed a button on his laptop. And suddenly in the silent courtroom, Lindsay and Derek's voices filled the air, cold, calculated, and heartless. "House goes on the market immediately. Liquidate his investment portfolio. He won't even know the difference soon enough." Each word echoed through the courtroom, cutting deeper than any accusation. Justice Rodriguez's expression hardened with every second. When the recording ended, Gerald looked up. His voice was calm, but the weight of truth carried through it. "Your Honor," he said, his tone sharp and unwavering, "this isn't a loving daughter protecting her father. Gerald's voice carried through the courtroom, firm and unwavering. "This isn't a loving daughter protecting her father," he said. "This is a premeditated attempt at financial exploitation." Every eye in the room was on him now. The weight of his words settled like stone in the air. "Miss Morrison Fletcher and her husband," Gerald continued, "are in severe financial distress due to bad investments. They stand to gain over $5 million by having Mr. Morrison declared incompetent. They've manipulated medical records, staged photographs, and built a false narrative, all to steal their own father's life savings." Lindsay's lawyer shot to his feet, his voice sharp and indignant. "Your Honor, this recording was obtained without my client's knowledge or consent. It's inadmissible." Justice Rodriguez didn't even blink. "In a criminal trial, perhaps," she said, cutting him off, her tone calm but cutting, "but this is a civil proceeding regarding guardianship, and I am very interested in understanding the motivations behind this petition." Then she turned her gaze toward Lindsay. Her voice was cold, deliberate. "Miss Morrison Fletcher, would you like to explain to me why you're discussing selling your father's house and liquidating his assets, while he's sitting here, clearly of sound mind?" Lindsay opened her mouth, but for several long seconds no words came out. Finally her voice broke the silence, fragile and trembling. "Your Honor, that recording was taken out of context," she said. "We were just discussing hypothetical estate planning." Justice Rodriguez leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. "Hypothetical estate planning?" she repeated. "Hypothetical estate planning that involves placing your father in an assisted living facility in Airdrie, while you pocket nearly $2 million from the sale of his home?" The judge's voice was ice, each word a blade. "Miss Morrison Fletcher," she said, her tone low but searing, "I've been on this bench for 18 years. I know financial elder abuse when I see it." A tense, heavy silence fell across the courtroom. Justice Rodriguez looked down at the papers before her, scanning them one last time. Then she looked directly at Lindsay and Derek. "I'm dismissing this petition with prejudice," she said clearly, "which means it cannot be refiled. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. Miss Morrison Fletcher and Mr. Fletcher are prohibited from contacting Mr. Morrison or coming within 100 meters of his residence for a minimum of 2 years. I'm also referring this case to the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service for potential criminal charges of fraud and elder abuse." She turned toward me then, and for the first time, her expression softened. "Mr. Morrison," she said gently, "I'm deeply sorry for what you've experienced. No parent should have to endure what your daughter has put you through. I'm ordering that all legal fees associated with your defense be paid by the petitioners. Additionally, I recommend you update your estate plan to protect yourself from any future attempts at manipulation." Across the room, Lindsay was crying now, but I knew those weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of loss, of defeat. When the gavel fell and the court adjourned, her voice rose, shaking, desperate. "Dad, please," she called out. "Dad, you have to understand." I turned to look at her one last time. The same daughter I had taught to ride a bike. The same girl whose hand I had held as she walked down the aisle. The same voice that had once called me Daddy, with love and trust. I looked at her and my words came out slow, steady, and final. "I understand perfectly, Lindsay," I said. "I understand that you were willing to destroy me for money. I understand that you saw your own father not as a person, but as an estate to be liquidated. And I understand that the mother you claim to have loved so much would be ashamed of what you've become." Josh's hand tightened around mine. My grandson, the only one who'd had the courage to do what was right, even when it meant standing against his parents. "Grandpa," he said quietly, "can we go home now?" I nodded, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Yes, Josh. Let's go home." As we walked out of the courthouse, Gerald fell into step beside me. "Tom, that was incredibly difficult," he said softly. "How are you feeling?" I stared ahead for a long moment before answering. "Honestly, I don't know," I said. Then I glanced at Josh. "But I do know this, not all family is blood and not all blood is family. I lost a daughter today, Gerald, but I gained the knowledge that I raised at least one person with integrity. That evening, back in my house in Mount Royal, the house Margaret and I had built together, I sat in the quiet for a long time. The air still carried her presence. The wall still held our life. Finally, I picked up the phone and called Gerald once more. "Gerald," I said, "I need to update my will. The house, the investments, everything. I want to set up a trust for Josh, for his education and his future." Gerald's voice was calm. "And Lindsay?" he asked. "Lindsay gets nothing," I said flatly. "Not $1. She made her choice." There was silence on the line. Then Gerald spoke carefully. "Are you sure, Tom? That's permanent." "I'm very sure," I said. "And Gerald, I want it explicitly stated why. I want the will to detail exactly what she tried to do, so that if she ever tries to contest it, a judge will know the full story." "Consider it done," Gerald said firmly before ending the call. A week later, Josh moved in with me. His parents had thrown him out after finding out he'd recorded them, 15 years old, and they chose money over their own son. The thought made something ache deep inside me. But I had a big house and, as Margaret used to say, a bigger heart. Josh needed someone who'd put him first. We settled into a rhythm quickly: breakfast together before school, homework at the dining table, weekend trips to the mountains. There was laughter in the house again, the kind I hadn't heard in years. Josh helped me in the garden, where Margaret once grew her roses. Now we planted vegetables side by side. One Saturday morning, as we were pulling weeds, Josh paused, dirt on his hands, and asked softly, "Grandpa, do you ever forgive her?" I looked up, squinting in the sunlight. "Whose son?" I asked. "Mom," he said quietly. I sat back on my heels, thinking for a long moment before I spoke. "Forgiveness," I said slowly, "isn't about them, Josh. It's about not letting their actions poison what's left of your life." He kept his gaze on the soil, waiting for me to go on. "Do I forgive what your mother tried to do?" "No," I said, my voice firm. "Will I ever have a relationship with her again? Probably not. But I won't spend my remaining years consumed by bitterness. I've got too much living left to do. And now," I smiled faintly, "I've got you to help me do it." 6 months passed. The air grew softer, the garden greener. Josh and I stood there together one afternoon, looking at the new plaque we just placed under the old maple tree. Margaret's name gleamed in the light, her birth and death dates etched beneath it. Below that, a quote we'd chosen together: "Family is not always blood. It's the people who stand by you when everyone else walks away." Josh tilted his head, reading it again. "Do you think Grandma would have liked this?" he asked. I smiled. "I think your grandmother would have loved it," I said softly. "And she would have been so proud of you." Just then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. "Gerald." "Tom," he said, his tone lighter than I'd heard in months, "I thought you should know, the Crown decided to file charges. Lindsay and Derek pled guilty to attempted fraud. They received suspended sentences and 2 years probation, but it's on their record now." I didn't say anything at first. He continued, his voice gentler now. "And that means, it's really over. They can't come back from this. Your estate is secure. Your autonomy's protected. You can live the rest of your life in peace." I looked over at Josh, who was carefully watering the small vegetable patch we'd planted together. My grandson, the boy who had saved me when I didn't even realize I needed saving, the boy I now had the chance to protect in return. "Thank you, Gerald," I said quietly. "For everything." That night, as Josh worked through his algebra homework at the dining table and I read beside him, a deep calm settled over me. The lamp's warm glow reflected off the pages, and I realized something profound. Lindsay had tried to take everything: my home, my money, my dignity, my independence, but what she'd actually done was remind me what really mattered. Not the house worth $2.4 million, though I was grateful to still have it. Not the investment portfolio or the bank accounts. What truly mattered was sitting across from me, chewing on his pencil, brow furrowed, fighting with an algebra problem. Family, I thought, wasn't about blood or obligation or inheritance. It was about the people who showed up when everything fell apart. It was about a 15-year-old boy who'd risked everything to do the right thing. It was about second chances, and the quiet grace of new beginnings. Margaret used to say people reveal who they really are when there's something to lose. Lindsay had shown me she was willing to sacrifice her father for financial security. But Josh had shown me that courage and integrity still existed in the youngest generation, even when it cost him everything. Now, at 67, I'd learned more in 6 months than I had in the 67 years before. I'd learned that trust is earned, not given. That those who claim to love you most can sometimes wound you the deepest. That real love isn't what you say, it's what you do when no one's watching. Most of all, I'd learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. That vulnerability isn't weakness, that asking for help is courage, and that fighting back against those who'd exploit you isn't vindictive. It's survival. To anyone out there facing something similar, I'd say this: if someone in your family is trying to declare you incompetent, to seize your life or steal what you've worked for, fight back. Get a lawyer. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Remember that your worth runs deeper than your bank account. You are not crazy, you are not confused, you are not paranoid. If someone is systematically trying to make you doubt yourself, it's because they want something from you, not for you. And if you're the adult child of an aging parent, remember, your inheritance isn't yours until it's yours. Your parents don't owe you their house, their savings, or their legacy. They earned it. They decide what happens to it. If you try to take it through manipulation or deceit, you might win the money, but you'll lose something much greater. You'll lose yourself. Lindsay spent 1.5 years scheming, manipulating, chasing an illusion of wealth. She might have thought she was planning for her future, but what she truly did was destroy her present. She lost her father, her son, her reputation, her self-respect. And as I sat there watching Josh quietly watering the last row of lettuce we'd planted together, I thought, was it worth it? I didn't need to answer. I already knew she knew. As for me, I had a grandson to raise, vegetables to grow, and a lot of life left to live. The house in Mount Royal wasn't just an asset worth millions anymore. It was home. It was where Josh was learning to become a man of integrity. It was where Margaret's laughter still echoed in the walls. It was where justice had been served and family, finally, had been redefined. And that, I realized, was worth more than all the money in the. Love this story? Like, share, and subscribe for more epic audio adventures. Stay curious and keep listening.